little Dovie Thurman. We've known each other some 30, 31 years. You were 19 years old. Here now, it's 31 years after we met. We're in your house here in Uptown.
Still
and
here.
I was thinking, you were in the middle of everything, the civil rights movement and after. And tomorrow you're going back in the hospital hoping for a heart transplant.
Yeah.
But you're here now as vibrant as ever to me as when you were 19 years old. Tell you when I met you.
Okay.
There was a tenants' rights battle going on. Tenants were gathering. And it was white and black together. Peggy Terry from Appalachia. Peggy was your friend. She was white. And there was this gathering there, and that was it, 31 years ago. What do you think? How have we gone? This is just a general question I ask about you and your life. How have we been going since then? How have things looked to you since then?
Things look a whole lot worse now because the things that we fought for so hard and got established in place were totally erased later on. We made Band-Aids, which were good, but we didn't quite get to the root of the cause. I got out of there just in time when I was 18 because these were experimental housing that they did, the government was doing to see if they could do something about the housing situation. And just after I moved out, things got real bad. I moved to Chicago with two of my children, and I had 2 children then. And just after I had moved out, they got so bad that they couldn't even send the police in. They couldn't get the firemen to go in. They were just terrible, much worse than these here in Chicago.
You mean the project in St. Louis?
Yeah,
the Pruitt-Igoe project.
Igoe.
Your husband was in Vietnam at the time.
Right, he was in Vietnam. He was over there fighting in the war.
So you came to Chicago, young woman, you were about, what, 18 or so?
About 19 then,
With 3 kids.
Yeah, well, the last one I had while I was here.
Oh, yeah. And then what happened? And what lit the fire? What lit the flame?
Well, it's amazing because basically as growing up, I've been a kid I was a kid who was sick all my life. I had rheumatic fever at the age of 8, and it left me with rheumatic heart condition. And my grandmother raised me. My father was dead, so she raised me and I was on Social Security. We got welfare, food stamps and stuff to supplement. And I used to, caseworker would come out and my grandmother, this is her picture right here. And she was a very light-skinned woman, she was mixed. And the caseworker would tell her that she needed to get rid of this little black child. This was a white caseworker. And she needed to give her back to her mama. And my grandmother would be upset and angry. But see, you knew how much to say then because they control your income. And you didn't have any recourse. So mama, she wouldn't say too much, but one time she insulted mama so bad till mama run out of the house with a knife. She chased her out. So I told mama, I said, wait till I get big and I'm gonna get them. You know, and then when I came to Chicago, I ended up, I was married and getting a allotment check from my husband, but it wasn't enough money. So I was applying for supplementary income, and that's how I got involved.
You had never met white people before, did you? Very, very few.
Well, all the white people I met were school teachers, or nurses, or doctors. Because of my illness, I was around a lot. Or either the nuns, Catholic Church, at the Catholic Church, they would come out to our house, social service. But I had never seen poor white people.
You didn't think white people were poor?
No.
Yeah.
All I seen was they had money. Looked like they had money to me.
So what happens in Chicago?
I went, me and my aunt, her name's Dovie too. We went and to apply for welfare, take me down to the welfare office to apply to get supplementary aid. And when we went down there was a lot of kids, young white kids, passing out flyers and leaflets and making a big noise around the welfare office. And I had never seen this because you didn't buck up at the system. You just took, you had
It's
to
about
take
1967, around there.
67, 66, 67. And this one guy come up to the car after we had just, he gave us a leaflet, a flyer. We was in the car, and I said I was going in to apply. So then when we came back out, he said, "Did you apply, sister?" Yeah, sister, okay. Yeah, I applied, and I said, "Well, why don't you come to a welfare meeting?" And I read the flyer. I hadn't read it. And it said all these things, hate night raids and people controlling your life, all kind of things that I hated.
These were these white kids in the 60s who were taking part in some of the civil rights stuff there. Rennie Davis, who was part of the conspiracy trial later on, was one of them.
Right,
Yeah.
SDS. At that time, I just knew that they were SDS students. They told me they were, that's the...
Student Democratic. But this group is called Join Jobs or Income
They had
Now.
organized an organization to bring the white people, the Southern white people, to a point, since everybody was organizing blacks, they wanted to get them to a point where we could come together at one stage. So they was organizing the Southern white people up in Chicago.
Let's go back a bit. See, the neighborhood we're in now is the neighborhood we're talking about uptown.
Right.
That is many poor Southern whites who came from the
Right.
deep South, from
Right.
Appalachia, from the Ozarks,
Right.
came to Chicago for jobs as black people did
Right.
from the South.
Right.
And so here you came across these people.
It was really more at that point, and the whole makeup of the racial context in this area was different. It was Southern whites, and it was American Indians, and a few East Indians, and blacks, a few blacks.
So you went to the first meeting. What happened at that? Describe that first meeting you attended.
God walked in, and me and my aunt, we walked in. And
Your aunt worked with your big Dovie Coleman.
right, because she had the most guts then. I didn't have a lot of guts. I still wasn't talkative, you know. And they hadn't let me know I could talk yet, you know, so I was still kind of shy about it. But she said, "We're going to go." I said, "Okay." So we went to the meeting, and we walked in, and I looked around the smoky room, people sitting up smoking pipes, but wasn't no black people in there. Just me and my aunt. Walked in the door, and everybody's head turned and looked at us. And of course, I was looking at them. And then when this lady who was standing up at the time, Mary Hockenberry, was the chairperson of the Welfare Rights Committee, they said, "Come on in, come on in." They welcomed us in, and I saw Rennie Davis, who gave us the flyer. And he said, "These are the sisters I invited out tonight." And so they was looking, but nobody said nothing. And we sat down, and they continued to talk. Next thing I know, I jumped up and had something to say. I had never had anything to say before then. And when I got through talking, they were all giving me a hand. We were all smiling. They was giving me a hand. Scared me. I scared myself because I didn't know I had it in me.
The first time you ever talked in public?
Yeah, my first public talk, and also seeing all these different people. I'm talking to a group of people I know nothing about. But they were saying the same thing that I had felt all my life, and we had talked about.
What was that same thing they were saying?
We were tired of being mistreated and treated like we weren't human beings, and people were running our lives, and just people were suffering, their kids were suffering. And I'm saying, yeah, but all the time in my head I'm saying, "You white though, I wonder why you going through this." You know, I knew that black people do this, but I'm wondering about what happened to the white people. How did they get here? But it was so amazing then. And then I come back. Well, we left out. Everybody clapped. We got through. We left out, and then that night, Rennie followed us to the car, and he told us, he said, "I am really amazed because everybody who usually come in, they want to jump on if any black men or stop by or anything, because they trying to deal with this racial issue too." And they were very happy.
So you ever notice that? I'm just wondering, poor Southern whites who come to Chicago, to big cities, and poor Southern blacks come to Chicago, find they have something in common, very much. They speak of home, not where they are, but where they came from. And something happens between them when they know one another. Is that so?
Yeah, I imagine so, because see, I didn't, I didn't quite come from that era, because I was sheltered in the projects.
Yeah,
know.
you were St. Louis.
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to do that mix out there like they did in the South. But I see that it was a lot of miscommunication, and people wasn't allowed to talk. They didn't know each other. They were stereotyped, and that's all they heard and all they ate.
So you found something out about these poor white people never did before, and they found something out about you.
Yeah, we found out we heard a lot of lies about one another. We weren't like that at all. Matter of fact, we found out we had more in common than we ever thought, you know. And but it's because we began to communicate, and we started, like, these people here were definitely racist, but it's like it just started melting, and maybe it started with just being around me and my aunt, although they had to eventually come that all black people were like they thought, and I had to come to all white people like I thought. And it began to melt down our relationship of feelings toward each other. We could talk about grits, we could talk about chitlins and greens, and boy, I bet they know how to cook like I did and everything. So we had a lot in common. They whooped their children and they didn't take no stuff, you know. So I'm saying, like, what is it that's keeping us apart? Then we found we had these stereotypes like the black women gonna take these white men, the black men gonna take the white women, or the black men gonna take their jobs. It was all kind of myth to keep us separated. And all the black men was gonna do was be studs and stud up their women. And it was just really sad.
These are the stereotypes. They were destroyed when you knew one another. Now what happened next? Now, we're talking now Martin Luther King, the Civil Rights Movement, also the Vietnam War. But what happened next with you?
Well, me, I wanted to, you know, I had got excited because I could talk. And I had a lot to say. And I wanted to understand more of what, this was a whole new life. So I want to understand some politics. Because in school, basically what we learn about the government, the Senate, and the, you know, the structure of the government and all that, but you just never really learn inside. And I was beginning to learn things. And by me being excited and kind of forceful there, not ashamed to speak, I got mad instead of getting glad and mad. They had lit a fire then. And whenever we go out, they'd always have me to speak, and I wasn't afraid to talk. I wanted to learn more about welfare system and how it was set up and who controlled it, because all I used to see was the caseworker. I didn't know it was a lot of people she had to give account of. And then we had classes. Somehow the students had got us involved, the leadership they were building got us involved in some classes at this church that was on Ashland. Saul Alinsky was teaching those classes.
Saul Alinsky was a community organizer.
Right.
Oh, you go to some of Saul Alinsky's classes?
I used to go every Saturday.
Did you?
Yeah, I didn't know who he was, but I set up in those classes.
But that what he taught you was what? About how a community...
How to organize, what to look for, how to... He was teaching us about how to approach people, what to expect from them. Well, thank God, even with what the knowledge that he was teaching me, I had some ideas of my own. It's nice when you shake a little of your own seasoning in it, you know. You follow the recipe, but you might want to make it a little better. And that's what, you know, my personality just fit in. And then I began to get more and more interested and inquisitive about politics. Who ran the country? Who was in charge? I began to see a bigger picture. See, I used to see a little bitty picture. And that's what kept me going, because I was just eating and learning. And then when I learned, I used it, and people followed. That let me know that something was there.
Now you never learned in school.
The right things I didn't learn in school.
Not in civics class. But this, now through working with these people in the neighborhood, you went to these classes and learned to organize. Then you also, remember now, you had never spoken before except that meeting in Uptown, just a year or so before this. Now you're speaking everywhere. You learned, you said, where the power was. That interests me. Where the power was. You want who was doing what to whom. Is that, pick up on that.
Well, I had to begin to get, see, you got to get your own head together before you can tell someone else how to approach things. And you got to see the enemy for who he is. And I began to see that it's a bigger picture and it's someone else controlling the strings, that we were fighting one group of people, but they didn't even have the control at the end. It still went up and up, finally to somewhere we couldn't even get to. And I began to also feel that people, if as many people just like me, there's a lot of people who were just like me who didn't know their rights. If we could just learn our rights and not learn them with $1,000 words, which at that point I didn't understand because we didn't use them in my house anyway. At that point I wanted them broken down and explained to me, maybe I got an idea if I know what you're talking about. So I didn't have no problem in saying that. Then when I would say that, other people would follow. And then we began to understand and communicate. Then the people who were talking with us began to recognize us more and give us more respect.
So this step, you see, you're hitting that people were fighting each other who had much in common. The poor fighting the poor, in this case, white and black, or those have-nots fighting have-nots.
Yeah.
And then you figure, well, somebody else is controlling this.
The habits, the one got it, they keep us fighting, they can still keep getting it. See?
The habits, what? Say that again. the habits?
They was the ones who had it, and they just kept the have-nots fighting each other, so we wouldn't get it.
So now you're in the middle of it, and you say who started paying attention to you? 'Cause now you're
the community people, and then as the community people start coming together, they would see us coming with a different presentation to them too. They don't care about you yelling and screaming. They don't care about you marching and demonstrating. What they care about is when you start getting to the truth and you start exposing. I know it's you. It's not him. It's you. He can't hardly pay attention, let alone pay a bill. So it's you. Why are you doing this? You know, and then on the other hand, okay, so he's white. Why are you doing it to the white man? He's just as white as the system. So it's something else. It's still deeper than race.
More and more, you're finding out more and more.
Yeah, I'm finding out class now. I went from race to class structure.
Race and class, both. You connect both.
Yeah, well, see, I look at it this way. Even, I don't know, the system at one point had set up such a high standard for upper class, middle class, rich, and the poor. You know, and we was basically on the totem pole down there on the poor spot. But they began to, I think when you get too much, you start overdoing it and wasting it, and they began to knock the poor on out the way, and the middle class was coming down. And the upper middle class, they was changing spots till the middle class got to be the poor. You know, so the system was like, it's still trying to do it, balance out to rich and poor, you know, and erase all the rest in the middle. But in the meantime, it took me a long time to get to that point because so many people need to be caught up on what the system was really doing and who was in control of it, who was benefiting.
So you were trying to get at the heart of things.
Yeah, because I was tired of demonstrating and protesting, and we go thousands of people to Washington, D.C. and yelled. I know they heard us, and they still did what they wanted to do.
So therefore, you figure what? What was the way of
start changing people's mind, getting the truth out, and start talking a little deeper politics, which is a dangerous thing to do, it seems like, because they don't want you to know too much.
You know, Martin Luther King once said in the speech in 1965 in that wagon, at the back of the truck at the end of the Selma Montgomery March, poor white's been fed Jim Crow instead of bread.
Uh-huh.
It's not very nutritious either.
Oh,
no.
starve you to death.
Yeah. I think, but now Martin Luther King, Dr. King came to Chicago. That's when you and your aunt, Big Dovie Coleman, met him.
Right. We had a meeting with him because of the organization that was up here in Uptown, joined at that point. And it was sort of good, too, because But at that point, there still wasn't a lot of blacks, and we was like the, see, a lot of things I got used in, but it turned around. I got used because some of the monies that come because the way the organization was set up, because they had some blacks in this unique organization. And I didn't know about that because I'm going straight, my heart is in what I'm doing, not money. I'm feeling power. That's what I like, power. And I got used because I was black. But it turned around, it backed up on them because we ended up being our own leader, you know. In a sense, I was still blessed because I learned some techniques. And then I had to find myself. Now it's coming a time when Dr. King, because I always used to look at Dr. King and he was a little bit too nonviolent for me.
So you were saying about you meeting your aunt, Big Dovie, meeting Martin Luther King in Chicago.
Yeah, I was saying
and he was too nonviolent for you.
Because I had a lot of rage inside. I was angry. And then the more I found out, the more angry I got. Plus, I hadn't really settled in my own heart who I am. Because, see, a lot of these things that I'm finding out have been instilled in me as far as being black, you know, and just accepting my own blackness and not want to be white, not want to be light-skinned, because I grew up in a family that was all light-skinned. My grandmother long, pretty black hair, and I was the darkest one. I always wondered why, you know, but it come from my mother, because my mother was dark. So Dr. King, when we met with him, well, he was demonstrating, like finding out about all this racism here. I didn't know it was racism in Chicago.
You didn't?
No.
No, what about Uptown there?
No.
The Southern
Uptown, when I came to Uptown,
yeah, people
know how to stay in their own territory, so it really didn't bother us. We wasn't having this kind of a problem.
Yeah, and many of these Southern whites got along with you. Were there?
Right.
It wasn't the majority of them, but
right.
There was...
Plus the fact is that they stayed on, like over here on Clifton, where I live now. They didn't come over. The blacks were congregated like on Leland. Leland and Winthrop around in there.
Self-segregated in some way.
Yeah. And then plus, but then they all went to school together.
Yeah.
So the kids kind of knew each other.
Yeah.
It was a whole different type of a thing.
But you didn't know about the rest of Chicago, more I should say, middle-class Chicago,
no,
more blue-collar Chicago.
I never thought about racism being here until Dr. King was talking about, like out there on Cicero and
Marquette Park.
Marquette Park. I just couldn't believe these people had these kind of attitudes. Well, he was going to demonstrate out there, but it was some kind of threat or something. So he didn't do it, but I forget the name of this other guy who led the demonstration.
Al Raby?
No, it was Coco, I think was his name. Kenwood, Oakland.
Well, that's okay. This can be cut out, no problem. Yeah. Well, you know of course, you know, Martin Luther King said the violence, a rock was thrown at him, was greater here than in the South at one time.
And then I said I couldn't stand for people be spitting at me and calling me names, and I didn't say anything back. And I would see on the TV before I moved here, that's when I was in St. Louis, we'd see him kneeling and praying and going across the bridges and stuff. I said, I couldn't be down there kneeling and praying while they doing all that.
So you were impatient with the nonviolence.
I was impatient.
Then what happened?
But well, that just I probably got nonviolent when I got changed. But anyway, I went from, after work, he wanted us to organize some welfare rights locals, because I had met with George Wiley.
George Wiley was the head of the welfare rights organization.
Right, the whole welfare rights organization. And he was out of Washington, D.C. And he had come here and met with Join, too. At that time, I was still in Join Community Union. But they didn't want us to work with them right there. They said we weren't ready. We had a welfare committee inside there. So my aunt and I, pulled out of Join. This is when we separated. They didn't want to work with Dr. King either. They weren't ready. They said the white people weren't ready to be taken over there yet. So, but we were ready. Dovie. And then there were some in there, some Indians, American Indians, because Joint had kind of got integrated a little bit.
But this is also following up on the idea of Martin Luther King.
Right.
He
because
wanted, he specifically asked for you.
Right.
And
Big
Dovie.
Right. And the thing was is that we got involved because we was trying to find every way we could to get a better understanding, and we enjoyed going and making a change if we could take part in it, being leaders. But at that point where we did that, we met with him later down, not in Chicago, to go down to Birmingham.
And now you and your Aunt Big Dovie went down to Birmingham along with Martin Luther King, and there you
well, this was
ran
after
into Bull Connors and the dogs.
Right, but this was after, when we went down to Birmingham, it was after his assassination.
Oh, it was after. Now, let's go back a bit.
That was after
So
that.
you used to work, and you're working with white people, too,
Right.
all the time.
Here
now
I am still working with welfare rights. That was the next big kickoff.
Right. Now, something happened to you now. You were fighting with your own matter of identity, who you are, or you want to be white or black, and you're wondering, and then you find something pretty good about yourself. Then you're working with whites, and then Dr. King is assassinated. And now what happens?
Well, that's when I went into, because like I said, he was always too nonviolent. But when he was assassinated, we were out on the south side of some big church for a meeting, and we heard when a priest came in and they had beat this white priest up so bad. And he came in all bloody, and it was me, my aunt, and I think it was Mary Hockenberry.
The white woman.
Uh-huh. We were at this meeting, and when he came in, because we were planning to get ready to go to the big march. See, they were setting up for the big march on Washington, where we had the shanty town. What was that?
The Poor People's March.
The Poor People's March, that's it. And so we were meeting at different churches. And when that guy came in all beat up, and they said Dr. King had been assassinated, and some of the blacks had jumped on him and beat him up out south there. So then we drove back, and by the time I got home, we got back over here to the north side. Things were just elevated. But when we got back home, they had, on these cars, they had, hail, hail, the king is dead.
What happened to you?
I got mad. I got instant angry. I probably turned purple. That's when my black really showed. I said, now here it is. This man is nonviolent. He been preaching nonviolence. He been just praying. He been marching, and he did nothing wrong. And they gonna kill him. Now I ain't going down like that. And I got so angry at all white people. I said, they don't care about nobody but themselves. And then these people who I was talking with, like Peggy, like Mary Hockenberry and Virginia Bowers, those was three of my white friends. We had been real close. And I pulled back from those people. I didn't want to have nothing to do with them.
So you rebuffed Peggy.
Yeah,
and
all of them.
Virginia and Mary.
Anybody white.
Yeah, all whites.
All whites. Now I'm thinking about getting super black. Because the Black Power with Stokely Carmichael was out there, and then you had the Black Panthers and things like that. So I'm thinking more, they the ones was right. Yeah, we need a gun. Never had thought about no gun and stuff. And then I got angry at myself because I was maybe I'm just too dark. You know, I was all messed up in my head, trying to figure out where do we go from here? What do? I want to get this person who killed Dr. King. That just didn't make no sense. Out of everybody, why would they kill him? He wasn't doing nothing. So I give him a reason. And I stayed separated from my friends. These were friends who we were together almost 24 hours a day. We ate, our kids played together. I didn't feel no color. I didn't even look at no color. But now all of a sudden I was.
Now you shunned them.
Shunned them away. And then I was angry at myself. I didn't know what I could do. I wanted to go join the Black Panther Party. Then I wanted to get involved in Black Power. I wanted to find me an African name. I just went all kind of ways in my thinking. See, I think this is so sad that you even have to grow up in a system that confuses you so bad, and then when things hit, you run to the wrong way all of a sudden. But I thank God he was there with me to get my mind together. And I really miss these people. I wasn't fitting in nothing that I wanted to be in. I didn't fit because that just was not in me. And I would always go back and think on how we fought so diligently for each other in the welfare rights, because that was our biggest thing. And I didn't care what color you was. I stood up and fought for you. And I didn't even have no feeling about that. So I had to get myself reorganized and remember how many people died with Dr. King when they was fighting for him, you know, in the organization. Going down south, and people would be giving their lives and stuff. So it still had to be something else out there. No, something still ain't right. We're going back to this color again, and I got tricked in it. It has nothing to do with the color.
And so now you're also fighting with yourself now, too.
I'm getting
You're
myself.
sore at yourself for feeling this way.
Yeah, for not
you felt the other way.
understanding.
And later on, one of you and, was it Peggy or Virginia, someone?
That was me and Peggy because we were close.
And then something happened. You came together again.
Yeah, we talked on the phone. She called me, and we talked on the phone. And I was glad to kind of hear from her, because we lived upstairs and downstairs with each other and everything. And we was talking about how much we miss one another. And she said, you know, I love Dr. King too. I marched him many times. I'd kill whoever could kill, who killed him, I'd kill them if I could.
You know, Peggy Terry said when I at a gathering, some mostly black people, Peggy, Appalachian white, 5th grade education, said, you know why I like Dr. King? Where else? Where else can poor white trash like me shake hands with a Nobel Prize winner?
That's Peggy. That's Peggy all the way. And it was no need. We both like felt hurt in our heart. And I apologized to her for keeping her at that distance. She understood. We embraced. And it was just like a hurt. That's all it was. Now we had to figure out which way did we go. Peggy told me, she said, Dovie, you smart enough. I'm so glad you come out of this. You smart enough to find which way to go. You don't have to let it eat you up. Don't let it suck you in. And I said, I'm not. I'm through with it. I said, somebody out there still trying to separate us.
Come to that part. Someone's still trying to separate us. That's what it's about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's a demon bigger than we could ever imagine. And the little stuff that it does, using those little things like assassinations and doing all manner of things to make people not come together, because they done started up with it again with the racism and the white supremacists and the super blacks, when you're not going to be living alone.
So now we're coming to you now. All this is coming together to you. And the last time I saw you before you went to the hospital, got sick, was the time you had become a preacher, an evangelist. We come to the road of religion, don't we?
I got converted.
What?
I got converted because I found out after all that running, the demonstrating, the yelling, the screaming, the fighting, it boils down to it's either you're evil or you're good. There's two things controlling a man. Either he's an evil person or he's a good person. And there are two spirits that control, and that's Satan and God. One of them gonna be in you. And it's what has the most force. And there's no prejudice in either one. They don't care who you are.
I mean, wait, do you think man is either evil or good? Isn't there a combination?
There's no middle, because one's gonna overpower the other.
But as far as, say, Peggy and you.
Peggy and I we had good in us. We were fighting how to get to that good. We never would have gotten that far if we hadn't had some good instilled in us.
I'm trying to say, do you recognize a weakness in other people?
Oh,
too,
yeah,
that can
yeah.
that can be overcome.
Yeah.
Or that too, good and bad in people.
Right, and the thing is, you got to draw out the good. Everybody can be bad, but nobody's encouraged to be good. And you got to show them the good points in them, where they can make a difference. And the change begins in the reborn of your mind. That's in organizing. I learned that from organizing.
Now, you became a preacher. Now, you were a Baptist once.
Yeah.
And now you're what? You're evangelical. You're all encompassing.
I'm an evangelist, non-denomination, because the denomination is only a word. It's what's inside the heart.
What do you preach? What's your sermon like? what kind of...
I preach the bug-naked truth.
The buck-naked truth?
The bug-naked. It ain't just naked, it's bug-naked. And ain't nothing covered up. Pull all the pants off. Show the evil for what it is and show the righteous for what it is. And you have a choice. And I tell you, if this system, I'm telling you, the system is controlled right now. I believe in what the Bible says, by evil force out here. And until people don't let it get to them, that's why there's no respect.
What
no
is
more.
that? Who controls the system?
Huh?
Who controls the system, you think?
Oh, well, I think that man controls it being led by a force, an evil power.
Well, I mean, is it not abstract?
It's Satan.
Huh?
Satan controls it.
You know, well, Satan is kind of general. I mean, you can't put the hand on Satan.
I know, but
No.
you can put the spirit on
What
him.
is it? Why did you and Peggy get together and Luke Pooper get together in the first place?
Because we had a warmth inside of us. We were looking for something different. We were tired of it. I know I was tired of going through the changes that I go through, trying to make a better life. But in the steps that I took led me, it's according to what steps you walk. And they led me to the right steps.
Remember you said you're talking about power way back, your power?
Mm-hmm.
Some people have power, not great many. Some people have power. And the great many don't have power. Isn't that what it's about?
Right. But, you know, I played a power game once in organizing. See, I told you a lot of it prepared me for the ministry. And in a power game, it was like 2 or 3 people had yellow chips. And there was like 3 of us had yellow chips. And the one person in front of us had blue, had a whole lot of blue chips. But when we decided, when the person didn't do what we wanted, and we decided not to give him our chips, he didn't get it. He needed yellow chips. He didn't get any chips. Matter of fact, we put our chips together and took all of his blue chips. And then he had nobody to control, because we had all the chips. And then who had the power was us. The one who had the power, we took his power away
So
from
you're
him.
talking about that one guy with all those blue chips, and the great many with a few little. He wanted those chips too, and you wouldn't give it. So you yellow chips got together.
We just shut down.
Okay.
That's like, to me, if the system, for example, right now, if all the criminals and all the black people who are falling into these tricks are in the jail, all the prostitution and all the drugs, everybody who's using those things was shut down and just stop, what would the person do who's issuing them out? They can't control nobody no more. The jails ain't making no money. We don't need the judges. We don't need the police system, because ain't nobody gonna fight. Then you lose your power. You have no control anymore. But people have to stop. They just have to think about what they can do.
And what they can do, you remember you talked about community organizing? Mm-hmm. Solinsky, what you learned of that, so we're talking about organizing too.
Right. Well, see, that begins organizing. Getting your souls and your mind together is organizing the way that you're going to present yourself and live your life. To me, holiness is a way of life.
You should get your soul and mind together. It's a combination of the two then.
Yeah.
By the way,
man, it's a 3-part being.
You're talking like a preacher now.
Oh, well,
Now, I mean,
I'm guilty.
You said, did your work as an organizer help you become a preacher?
Yeah.
How?
Because it got me used to being in a flow. I think that was the way God set it up, really. Because I had to first get used to the masses of people and the different types of people and find out people weren't my enemy. See, because when you get saved and in Christ, you find out that your enemy ain't the people, it's what's inside of them. If you can just get them to change that, it changes a lot. What would make you cry if you looked at me and I'm hurting and suffering and make another person sitting there and say, I deserve it? It's what's in you. And when you got the right things within you, that's going to hit that compassion part. Man has to have that for each other in this system. They wouldn't starve people to death if they had compassion and caring. They wouldn't put money as a value more than lives.
So you are an organizer as well as a preacher.
Well, Jesus was. All he did was told the buck-naked truth, and they followed him.
You felt Jesus was an organizer.
Deep one, yeah. Look how many followers he's got now.
Do you remember he was, Jesus, there was a cartoon years ago, back in 1915. A guy drew a cartoon of Jesus. It was a picture of Jesus head, and down below it said, wanted. It could be in the post office wall. Wanted, he stirreth up the masses.
Well, that's the truth. That might have been his imagination of how Jesus looked, but he sure does stir up the masses, and he is wanted. That's what they're looking for now, but they going and finding computers and everything.
What do you think would happen to Jesus if he came back to earth today? What would happen?
Not a thing, because power, who's got the power? He's got the power. Nothing could happen.
So as a preacher, we talked about you really believe in Jesus Christ in a way as an agitator, because he agitated, didn't he? People.
Well, he agitated the ones who didn't want to be bothered with him, yeah, when he was telling the truth. I just think that your ways and the leadership, if you do like Jesus did and just tell, all he did is went around telling the truth in regards to religion. And there was too many things people had added. And it's the same way even in our laws right now. It's too many things they have added. The Constitution is not just the Constitution. Your rights is just not your rights anymore. They done added this and that, and they don't fit. That's not how life goes. So I think, like you asked me what I think they would do if Christ was walking here, they'd see him and move out his way. Because he see him and move out his way. They did in the Bible. Those demons knew when he was coming. And the same with a powerful leader. That's what they had to do with, I love this man, the Cardinal Bernardine. They think he's so strange, but he's not. He's like a Christian, like he's supposed to be. And even though his religion was called Catholic, the man loved people. It had nothing to do with that.
I was thinking, you have to soon go in for a heart transplant. We've been going at this for some time, and you're as vibrant, your voice, your thoughts as vibrant as ever. We started at the beginning saying about you feel bad about things, not optimistic. All the battles and back again. Were there gains and losses? There were some gains made, weren't there?
Yeah, the gains with, for example, when we used to do welfare rights teachings and know your rights, and there were some benefits given to the recipients and to the caseworkers as well, because they found they were under some bad situations, but have since been cut out and changed because of the political arena, whoever's in charge up there making the decision. They allowed us to have these things for a while till we knew our rights, then they changed our rights. So we couldn't use them no more. Just like this housing situation. We worked hard at Voice from the beginning of building Voice, and went through a lot of court battles and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from different people working, and fought for Section 8. But now, here comes the cuts and cut out Section 8. So each one of our buildings is dwindling down into Section 8. And so that means that we only had a Band-Aid for a while, but we still didn't get to the root because somebody up there is still cutting.
Well, we haven't talked about, you mentioned prisons before, and I talked more police and more cops. We haven't talked about jobs, have we? Jobs.
It seems like they cut all the jobs out.
I mean, if people had jobs.
If people used to have that working attitude, but they have played the job role down so bad, and then they'll say, put it on. You got a lot of people out of work who have master's degrees, who paid for who've gone to college and got scholarships and all these big letters beside their name, but they don't do no good, and yet they tell the poor man, get a job.
There is this one change taking place. There's a new, you heard the phrase, the black middle class.
The what?
The black middle class.
Uh-huh.
It's the black, you heard of that group. Yeah. There's a new, young blacks who've made it good.
Oh, okay, okay. What about them?
No, I mean, that's pointed out as an advance, but others say the great many people have it worse than it was before because you had your chance and now you've lost. That's what's said.
And even into the black middle class, once you get to a certain point, they start stepping on you too and start giving you a whole lot of problems. It doesn't matter. There's still that one big demon up there who don't want a certain people to go too far because you lose control.
Little Dovie, just as we look back now, we're near the end of this conversation, as we look back now, it's 30 years yourself, we've talked about a number of things. Anything we haven't talked about, you feel like saying, any base we haven't touched?
Well, I just would hope and pray that younger children, like my grandkids coming up, who don't get what we used to give out, because even my children don't give out the same kind of teaching and training that I gave them. And as each generation goes, it gets less and less. The values get less and less, and they don't have a feel for the struggles to how where they are, that they're where they are right now because somebody had to give. Somebody had to sacrifice. And I'm hoping and praying that something will come about. That's why I work on religion so hard, because you gotta have some training somewhere to keep your moral balance right in order to learn how to even endure with this crazy system we got out here. Because to me, the people's hearts are waxing cold. It's more coldness out here than ever. There's too many people on the street with no housing, and folks look now and turn their head. Somebody laying in the gutter, it don't mean nothing. And I remember the time it did, and this is what we've lost. But some of us who are still here got those characters and morals, got to give it back.
You're talking about continuity, kids, remembering something that went before. But this other thing about people look away from homeless people, look away from those ill-clad. And you're implying there's a coldness here.
It is. They can see you're hungry, they won't feed you. They're used to it now. Death is no stranger. My grandkids have seen shootings on the street I'd never seen. Stuff like that. They're seeing things I've never seen because everything is too open and too wild, so that dulls the senses of men now. Men's senses getting dull and toward one another. We're not even hardly a piece of meat to each other anymore.
So it's always a battle, isn't it? It has to be a battle all the time.
Life is a battle, and you got to run it until the end.
Well, you've got another battle now, another fight.
Yeah.
You always said you're ready for another fight, and you got a big fight
Well,
now.
I tell you what, if I ain't ready, I better get ready, because it's a big one. I never, in my organizing, what caused me to have the first open heart surgery is marching and demonstrating, protesting, till I wore out that valve. Then I ended up with a plastic valve. Went on a few more years, 9 years later, I had to have the second open heart surgery. I wore out that valve, all giving myself, and I wasn't supposed to be doing all these things according to medical because of my heart, but I wanted to fight. Now, the heart's gone again, only this time it went on about its business because now the muscle is gone, and it wouldn't do it, and two valves don't work anymore on the right side. So I'm still fighting death. Hey, but I'm a winner.
You're gonna win. How can you lose? Because you got that fight.
Hey.
You're fighting death. You're like you're punching at it.
Oh yeah. I gotta go. That's why I appreciated Cardinal Bernardine too. He faced it.
So
I face it, and I don't fear it. But I got the victory.
Little Dovie Thurman, You're in another fight, another battle. And you know what? You're going to win. Thank you very much for being Dovie Thurman.
I thank you for being stud. Never change. Excuse the tears, but they're only tears of joy. Because I see, my Bible tells me the race is not given to the strong, but it's given to the one that endures to the end. And it ain't the end yet. So,
Got it.
I never thought I'd face this one. This is a big one. You are giving your life to the people. People don't recognize you. They don't know who you are. They don't remember you. And I get sick of people giving folks monuments and naming streets after they dead. Why don't you give people stuff while they know that you appreciate them? What good is it when you're dead? That's when they say, give me my flowers while I can smell them.